Thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. On today's review, we take a look at the Hot Toys Gladiator Thor Deluxe version. I'll be scoring this figure in 6 categories: accessories, articulation, design, is it essential to your collection, functionality, and price. Once all the scores are totaled, I'll be giving you my opinion if this is a pass or a purchase. So let's take a look at the accessories. The figure comes with a single head sculpt. In addition, you receive an assortment of weapons as well as hands. I'm going to start my way from the left and work over to the right. So here you have 2 twin blades. If you take a look at the handle, you could actually see some red bleeding off into the gold, coming back to red at the base, touched up with some black. And also you see a bluish green with some black running through the lines and some silver brushwork. The shorter blade is done the same as the long one. Red bleeding into the gold, back at red in the handle with some black layers. Again, the blade itself is bluish green with black running through it, and not as much, but you do see some silver paintwork coming through here. For the 2 smaller blades, you get a sheath to store them. You can see some dents, some dings throughout it. So you receive another blade done in silver, gold, and black. It is black and silver throughout the handle. You see some inscriptions at the base as well as up the blade itself. There's silver on the outside with some gold paint in between. You also receive a shorter blade, done pretty much the same as the blade that I just showed, gold and black around the handle, some inscriptions in the base as well as up the blade working its way through. Outside is silver, inside is gold. You also receive a mallet done in a charcoal black. You can see some metallic red paint as well as some silver brushwork throughout the metallic red. On the charcoal, you also get some paint to break it up. Sort of looks like maybe a beige color to give that added rust look. And you also receive some studs on the handle itself for gripping. You also receive a shield. It's very hard for me to pinpoint the color. It almost seems like a mixture of gold and silver, sometimes with the silver coming out more than the gold itself. Throughout it, you get what looks like dirt, a lot of weathering through it. You get a lot of parts to where they're painted blue, as well as some black traces throughout. You also receive that same, well, it's actually not the same red. It doesn't look that metallic as the weapon before. Yes, it is different. So it seems like a lot of colors are popping through, but definitely the mixture of the silver and gold. On the inside, the weathering continues. Here's a place for Thor to put his hand or arm in and hold this handle, which does not move. You also receive this firing weapon. It does not come with battery, so it does not light up. You see a lot of silver, actually a silver here as well as a matted gray. Continuing on with the red theme as some of the other weapons have. Get some blues and red here, which looks similar to a power coil. And you receive Thor's helmet, which is painted very clean. You see some dark grays, some light blues on the side, along with touches of silver. This part is functional, it does move. And you can see just a little bit of weathering effect. Overall itself, it is a very clean helmet. There's also the magnet inside, which attaches to the top of his head. You receive 2 buttons which attach to his shoulder and cape in the event if you lose the ones that come with him. You receive 4 come on, let's speak English today. You receive 4 pairs of hands. So a grabbing hand, weapon hands, fisted hands that still carry some red marking, kind of like how they did the theme throughout. You can see that this part is supposed to be held in the inside of the hands, it wraps around, lost inside of the fingers. And this will be it for the hands. And last but not least, you receive a base, which I haven't even taken out of the plastic because I don't use them. So for articulation, the head isn't really able to look up at all. You're able to get this much looking down, rotate side to side, and you get some head pivot. So with the arm, it extends up that much, which is great for Hot Toys. It actually rotates. You can do a full 360 if you choose to. There is a butterfly joint. Doesn't give you a lot, but it does give you some range of movement forward and backwards. And you can already see that right here in the figure, it's already tearing. And when I tell you, I don't even move this. This is actually my first time really messing with the figure. So something to be careful with. The elbows are double jointed, bending almost all the way in. The arms extend this much out. And in order to rotate the arms, because they're seamless, you want to rotate from here. So you're able to get some good range of movement in the arms. Now with the body, there isn't much movement in this torso. It doesn't move back at all. It really doesn't move to the front either. It's such minimal pivot that I'm not going to even call it pivot. Now you do get a waist swivel underneath. It's restricted by the material. The legs are able to extend that far. They're able to split this far, and again, restricted by that material. You do get a swivel at the upper thigh. No swivel below that. There are double jointed knees, which bend in that far. No boot cut. The ankles are able to go all the way up, all the way down, and pivot both sides. It's also worth mentioning that the leg on my figure is pretty loose. Excuse me, that was a light falling over. So this leg on my figure is very, very loose. I don't like that. For accessories, does Thor come with enough? Well, he comes with 8 weapons, a shield, a helmet, 4 pair of hands, and a sheath. He comes with a hell of a lot. But is any of it actually any good? So Thor comes with 6 blades. One set is a duplicate of the other, and each version has a smaller version of itself. For the 6 blades, you receive 1 sheath, which store the smaller 2 blades. If you're asking yourself, well, where do I put the other blades? That is an excellent question, because there's nowhere on Thor to actually store those other weapons. So this set of blades are actually my least favorite. I'm not a fan of the coloring scheme. It throws me off that the blade itself is nor matte nor metallic, maybe something in between, maybe satin. The blades themselves are painted well. They're just not for me. So this set of blades are my favorite. I like the silver as well as the gold. Even though the gold could have been more metallic, but I really like the look of it. It reminds me of the Wonder Woman blade. Clearly some differences, but I think that you can see where I can look at the blade and think of the Wonder Woman blade, sort of the gold, but I really like the colors on this one better. But being that this isn't a review about Wonder Woman, let's move that. The main thing that bothers me about each of these weapons are that they are plastic. Not sure what happened with Hot Toys giving us die-cast weapons, but these weapons would have been much better if they had metal components to them. I would have liked to see some more weathering, some dents, some dings in his helmet, similar to the weathering that is on this shield. Both accessories work well with the figure, sort of giving him a different look. But again, I wish that they were die cast. So I knocked off some points for a few things. I knocked off some points for only having one head sculpt. I knocked off some points for the weapons not being in die cast. Even with me knocking off points, this figure still receives an 8 out of 10 because it simply comes with so much. So for articulation, the head has limited upward mobility, which is a bit disappointing, being that the figure is not restricted by long hair, accessories, or any article of clothing. Aside from the upward movement, the head actually functions pretty well. Moving on to the arms, in my opinion, which has the best movement in this figure, especially to be constructed of a seamless mold. The torso is very limited. I believe it's a combination of the clothing, also the body type that's used underneath the clothing. The legs also have limited articulation, being restricted by the cloth that's around them, also the singular use of the upper thigh swivel. The double jointed knees do not come all the way up. The ankles are a thing of beauty, pivoting side to side, up and down exceptionally well. So for articulation, this figure receives a 7 out of 10. So for design, I think the sculptor did an excellent job at capturing the likeness of the actor who portrayed Thor in the movie. What I would like hot toy sculptors to think about moving forward is it's not just about capturing the likeness of the actor, it's about capturing iconic moments in the movie. I feel confident saying that a large number of collectors who purchased this figure did so to stand it toe-to-toe with their Hulk figure. However, if you look at the head sculpt, it's so non-expressive. It doesn't show rage, it doesn't show fear, it doesn't show any emotion at all. The problem with that is during the movie, Thor was fighting for his life. This face sculpt doesn't give you any idea of that. If you take a look at one of the two head sculpts that came with the Gladiator Hulk figure, Hulk is ready for war. Whatever Thor is ready for, it is certainly not war. And this is the problem that happens when we receive one instead of two head sculpts. So Thor has red paint that comes down from his forehead all the way to the neck. I really like how the hair looks itself, except when we get to the side and we can see that seam up top. Sort of looks like a toupee to me. Aside from the toupee, I like the marks that's in his hair from that rough haircut. Working his way down, I like the skin texture. If it's coming out well on camera, you can see the white flesh tone with some darker flesh as well as some red pigmentation. It looks pretty good. You can also see some speckling to where the beard is starting to grow back. So the vest that Thor is wearing is all black. You have some added details, so let's start at the top. We'll start at the very neck here. You see some brown underneath the black. Moving on here, this is more of a nickel color that comes from one side of the collar, sort of to the other. You have two buttons, both in a goldish color. Then you have this brown, I'm going to call it a belt, with some nicely painted details up here in that same goldish color. There's also some orange markings that you see in the chest that's also continued from the belt here, which also follow on the shoulder. So those markings actually come all the way down to the leg, which I'll show a little bit later. Here you can see that they continue on the belt. You have this pendant, which is predominantly black and has some gold in the inside, which looks pretty good. Rotating the figure, just remove this for a moment. The cape is done very well. It has some very rough edges. See if I can clear that up on video a little bit. There we go. So it has some rough edges. Also, it has some brown paint, which makes it look dirty. There are some tears. So it was a great job in the cape. And you can see it's held from a loop in the belt. And that black just continues all the way around. So with the arms, they also continue that same coloration that the face had. You can see the white followed by a darker skin tone and also with some red speckles underneath. You can see the vein work as well. That continues throughout the figure. Let's see if I take one of the lights down, if that helps. The pants are done in two types of fabric. Here is a leather type material on the inside, and continuing to the back is more of a cloth material. So as you continue down on his leg, the writing stops. However, we can look at some brown wrapping that continues throughout the figure. On the opposite side of the figure, on the knee, the writing starts again, and it's over this bluish green color. And behind that, you can see the brown wrapping that was on the other side of the figure. So for overall design, I'm going to give this figure an 8 out of 10. Is this Thor essential to your collection? Well, if you miss out on this version, Hot Toys has several Thor figures underneath their 1/6 scale lineup. So since you have an opportunity to grab other Thor figures, you have to ask yourself what attracts you to this figure. If it's simply the weapons, then you can look at the aftermarket and find similar items. If it's to go toe-to-toe with Hulk, then you don't need this particular version, as Thor has fought with Hulk in the comics on numerous occasions and hasn't necessarily sported this look. Also, this version of Thor does not come with his iconic hammer, and Thor without his hammer is like peanut butter and jelly without the jelly. So for this figure being essential to your collection, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10. Let's take a look at functionality. If we turn Thor to the back, we can see that the sheath that I tucked 2 blades in are connected by a magnet. I love that. I mean, it's not the strongest of magnet, but it does work. Another component on this figure that works very well would be the shoulder pad. How it's able to adjust, slide down out of the way, just giving that free range of movement. So something that I'm not crazy about, if you take a look, you could see this seam. Don't focus on this. These are actually cuts in the hair itself to how the movie was. But follow this seam. If you ask me, it looks like a toupee. And that's done so that you can detach the hair, which will show you a magnet, so that you can put this helmet on. So the head slides into the helmet like so. Done this way was because of the hair. The hair is actually too long to fit inside of the helmet, so they decided to detach the hair itself to squeeze in, which is a smart idea. However, when you detach this piece, there's nowhere to put it. There's nowhere inside the box that's made for this piece. So the question is, what do you do with it? The answer is probably lose it if you're not careful. So the figure comes with 4 pair of hands, which is a good amount. 2 fisted hands, which I understand. 2 weapon holding hands, which we absolutely need. And then we get hands like this. Now, I'm not mad at these hands. However, I really don't see the purpose that they serve. And what I would have preferred would have been additional weapon holding hands, because we have weapons that handles aren't the same size, which means in times you're very likely to stretch 1 or 2 of the hands that you actually receive. So with the neck, This should have been on its own separate peg. If it was, you would be able to get added range of movement. However, the peg is simply up top, only to rotate, lift, to move the head itself. So due to the material, the legs are only able to spread this far. Hot Toys has to figure out some sort of solution for the material that they're using for their action figures in order to provide additional range of movement, or not to restrict the range of movement that the body is capable of doing. For those of you who've seen my videos before, you hear me constantly bringing this up. It's the peg system. I'm unsure why Hot Toys simply does not place the peg inside each hand. It will make it so much easier. I constantly have an issue with my hands either attaching or staying attached to my figures. They're so easy to knock off. And of course, it doesn't work there. The figure is pretty hefty, making him very stable. It is easy for this figure to stand. So for functionality, I'm going to give this figure an 8 out of 10. So it was a pain in the behind to attach this hand to this shield. I'm not sure if I have the right hand on. It's not all the way flush, but at the moment it's holding. This piece doesn't move, so it's very difficult to get the hand to wrap around it. I'm able to take the hand off of the figure and to securely put it around this piece. However, once I try to put the arm through this harness, I'm having a hard time connecting the hand to the arm. It is way too difficult. Hot Toys has to figure out a better solution for that. So I'm going to actually change the score from 8 out of 10 to 7 out of 10 for functionality. And a quick shot for some scale. So if I remember correctly, this is the deluxe version of Thor, which was priced at $257 or somewhere around that mark, which in no way is cheap for an action figure. However, this Thor comes packed with a lot. There are a lot of accessories. The down part of the accessories they are plastic instead of being die cast. Thor comes with a phenomenal head sculpt, probably one of the best that I've seen in a while from Hot Toys. However, it's the only head sculpt. And you know how I feel when you get into that mark of figures that are $200. It should be a minimum of 2 head sculpts with those figures. Thor also comes with an assortment of hands, which is fantastic. In my opinion, some of the hands are useless. We would have been better off having more gripping hands to go around the weapons. With all of that said, I'm still surprised that this figure came in under $300. So for pricing, I'm going to give Thor a 7 out of 10. That brings the Cliff score to 41 out of 60. So now, is this a pass or a purchase? For me, this is my only version of Thor on 1/6 scale. So for me, it is a purchase. For those of you who may have other Thor figures, I would probably say not so much. I mentioned earlier that Thor without his hammer, it's like peanut butter and jelly without the peanut butter. So you ask, why did I get this version? Because I was able to track down some of his hammers on the aftermarket. So I have 2 versions of the Thor hammer, which could actually go with this figure. So thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. I hope to see you on the next review.